One of the most respected and feared weapons on the Japanese battlefield was the Yari, the spear. One stab and you're a dead man. Let's take a look at this powerful weapon of war. Throughout Japanese history, there were tons of different types of Yari, all different shapes and sizes depending on the battles and the use that they needed. This here is a simple Su Yari, and Su just means straight or simple, unadorned, just does the job. Behind me is a Jumonji Yari, which is like in the shape of 10, it's a cross shape, more for hooking on clothing and armor and things like that. But there were just not these two, there were dozens of other shapes and sizes. You have regular type Yari, you had the Su Yari like mine, the Sankaku, the triple-sided Yari, Jumonji Yari, Katakama Yari, Kama Yari like sickles, Kikuchi Yari, Omi Yari like a hook or a Kage Yari, a Sasaho leaf-shaped Yari, a Fukuro Yari, Chidori, the name goes on and on. They even had something called Makura Yari, which were pillow spears, spears that you would keep by your bedside to protect your house and your family. If someone was breaking into your house, you have to imagine the old days, there's nothing around, doors open up, someone sneaking in, you have one of these Makura Yari by your side. They don't know what your house looks like, get into the darkness and poke them from afar with one of these long spears. People revere the tachi, the sword, the katana, I understand that, but the Yari was far superior. Think of your sword back then as a pistol on your side. The Yari would have been like an AR-15, it would have been a rifle. It would have been so feared by those on the battlefield who had short little swords, and whether you're on a horse or you're an ashigaru, a foot soldier, this thing could hit you at length without you even seeing the tip because it's so thin. They say in the old days that this powerful weapon took out more warriors on the battlefield than swords. So long distance would be the best. You would have your Tanegashima at a certain part of history, these matchlock rifles, not very accurate, but you could use them. Then you had the Yumi, the bow and arrow, took out thousands of people. Thirdly, you had the Yari, the Naginata, these big polearm weapons that would stab you from afar. Hard to see, would go right through your armor, or at least find the chink in the armor and go right into your neck, face, armpit, wherever. Nasty, deadly weapon. Your lower level close combat weapons such as the tachi, the katana, wakizashi, the tanto. This was a last-ditch effort. If you had one of these would be stronger, more superior. But if it broke, all you might have left is your sword or your dagger. That's fine. Then if all hell breaks loose, all else fails, you have your hands, sticks, and stones. Here at the dojo, we train with many different types of weapons, and one of the arts that we teach here is Sojutsu. Sojutsu is the art of the spear, but you wouldn't want to use a real one like that. Your ukes, your training partners wouldn't like that. So we use wooden spears, such as this Hankaku spear here, and there are different people that make these. Here's another one, kind of a simple Yari. These are handmade of wood and they're riveted twice. They're very, very well crafted, good quality, different types of woods, but you would have to search online for the different types of wood you would want. I highly suggest that you use wooden spears to train with your friends so you avoid injury. So let's take a closer look at this beautiful Hanwei spear by Paul Chen. Starting with the saya, which is about 20 inches long. This is made of lacquered wood and it's pretty thick because the shape of the blade has a triangle to it. So this particular blade, which is called a ho, is 16.75 inches long, and as you can see it has a fuller that goes 3/4 of the way down the blade. This is a high carbon T10 steel and it is extremely sharp. I don't know if you can see the hamon line there, but it is differential tempered, so there is a sharp hamon line on both sides. You can see that this side of the Yari is flat and this side is sticking up in a triangle shape to make a wider wound. Also, if you spun it around, it would cause massive tissue damage. As you can see, the tang, the nakago, goes all the way down to about here. That is a very long tang. It's not like a rat tail, it's quite thick. The shaft is pretty well balanced and it's got these adorned rings on them with different arrowhead shapes here, and it's quite long. This Yari is about 6.5 feet long. The longest Yari I've ever seen personally was 16 feet long. As with most polearm weapons, don't forget one of the advantages is you can use both sides. This is the butt cap called the Ishizuki or the Hiromaki. And this butt cap is probably made of brass. It's not the best quality. It's glued on here quite well. That's not going to come off. Really nice to hit someone with, and then of course you could turn it and finish the job with the sharp pointy end. This Hanwei replica is hard to find online. You could probably find it on eBay on occasion, used or new. I have seen them on eBay on occasion. A real spear, what's the price range, people ask? They used to be about $600 to buy one. Now they can be anywhere from $600 to $1,200 because they went up in value when they stopped making them. So I'd say anywhere from $500 to $1,000 depending on the salesperson. They probably didn't sell very well because they're expensive to make, and most people out there, the average person, collector, is not going to buy a spear. The saya scabbard only fits one way because of the shape of the blade. To me, this is too loose, so that's not very well made. I don't know, sometimes these were tied or covered to keep the rain off with a fukudo, but this is not very, very tight, so it will come off very easily, but maybe you'd want that. If you were going into battle, you could just slide it off very quickly to get this blade out. The weight of this spear is around 4 pounds. Spears were designed literally to stab. You could cut with them. I have cut some tameshigiri with Yari, but I find that the shafts are not reliable because the tang stops here. It's quite possible these can cut, and I have cut with them, but I don't trust this not to break. I have not cut with this particular spear yet, but I may do so in the summer when it gets warmer out. Primarily though, this was a stabbing weapon. It was not designed because of the straight chokuto blade to cut. But if you got in someone's armor, under the helmet, you could certainly saw away with this. It would work quite well. It's very, very sharp. As with just about every other weapon in Japan, it comes from China. It evolves from China into Japan, onto the island nation, and then it evolves in shape and functionality depending on the war and the period of history. Yari developed from chang, which are Chinese spears. Spears in Japan may be as old as the Nara period, which was around 710 BC. However, they became much more widely used in the culture in the late 1300s and the early 1400s. Now, in the long Muromachi period, which was about 1300 to 1600, there were thousands and thousands of ashigaru. Ashigaru were soldiers on foot. They weren't on horse, they were on foot. And they used these spears all the time. They were used in clan battles for power for many, many years in Japan. Factions of soldiers under different leaders would practice these weapons daily and carry them into battle all day long. All of these different types of spears were used in various battles, such as the famous 10-year-long Onin War in the 15th century. At the end of the 16th century, some of these most treasured Yari spearheads were made and forged by the same masters that did the high-quality swords. I saw several of these spearheads being displayed in museums in Japan. These types that you see nowadays are called mochi, or hand spears. Can you guys imagine the fear of seeing line after line of armored men carrying these? They were trained to form up to 2 or 3 rows of nearly impenetrable front lines, stabbing down over and over again over the poor samurai of the opposing side. The spear could target weak points of armor or angle into crevices to swiftly stab and bleed out enemies. Was it the most feared weapon? Perhaps. Swords were usually unmatched by a good spear. Length would often beat skill. The key to survival was to get inside of the danger zone of the spearhead and get close enough to the enemy where the shaft could not do as much damage and he could have been taken down with a tachi or a kodachi. Battles of this scale would have been vicious, merciless, and stunning. Later on in history, after the turmoil stopped in the Edo period, things calmed down, everything settled, but Yari were still made. They were still made for ceremonial purposes. They were made to carry by castle guards, and even the police later on carried small Yari. This is a reproduction Yari. It's not old. I don't know when it was made, probably 20 years ago or so. This is a real Yari from the Edo period, long time ago too, maybe 300 years, I'm not sure. It is signed on the Nakago here. You can see this is a small Yari tip as compared to this one. This might have been an indoor house Yari or something small like a Makuta Yari, not as effective on the battlefield as this big brother would have been. But either way, these things have a massive reach over different types of weapons. So the next time you want to get all googly-eyed about your swords, I agree, I love the sword too, but the sword was a little brother. The big brother, the big bros in town, the Yari. This was the guy you'd run from on the battlefield.